Dak Prescott is all about moments. Marcus sat right here before the season began and said that. It's not about whether he can play or not. We all know he can play. And right now, he's playing perhaps at an MVP level. If he wins this Sunday, I believe he will become the MVP frontrunner in the NFL.
Yeah, agreed.
Sure. But more is at stake than that. It feels like something bigger. He needs a win like this. They almost beat Philly last time. They could have beat Philly, maybe should have beat Philly. They were inches away on two different occasions.
Steps out.
They got blown out by San Francisco. This feels like the biggest regular season game, at least from a perception standpoint, that we have seen Dak play.
I can get on board with you. I'll say this about the game. Their team needs this win. Dak needs it. This team needs it for their psyche, right? They had an opportunity. They didn't quite get it done in Philly, right? They get on this hot streak. Dak's playing as well as they can. Everybody's feeling good in Dallas. The worst thing that could happen is to Philly come into your house and put a beat down on you. So as you look at this football game, and they have a gauntlet of a schedule after this game. So to me, it's a must-win for your reasons, but for their psyche of their team.
It only matters if they lose. I want to get on board with you, but I've seen this happen to Dak too many times. It's like, well, he has to do this before we put him in this category. And then he does it, and then we move the goalposts. Dak needs to win in, like, the divisional round, get to the championship round, win in that situation before I think we put it to bed. If he wins this week, if he loses this week, then the story of Dak keeps going. If he wins this week, people are going to say, do it in the playoffs.
Well, I'll pick it up with you there, because I think if there's one thing we have seen, that both the Cowboys and Eagles should have one goal and one goal only in mind, and that is stay the heck away from San Francisco. And so the best way to do that is to win the division, right? You stay as far away from the 49ers as long as you can and hope something else derails them. Injury, upset, or whatever it might be. You don't want any part of San Francisco until you have to.
No, and I mean, obviously, that's not the way they're going to think, because I'm sure they believe they can beat them. But the fact of the matter is,
I have no evidence whatsoever that suggests they can.
Having the home games matters. Having the bye matters. And there's no way you're going to do that without winning the division. To the point about Dak, we have seen Dak Prescott and the Cowboys beat the Eagles in a late season game, in a game that helped determine the division. He's done that before, right? So Domonique is absolutely correct. He has to win in the second and third round of the playoffs to change the conversation about him. The best path for Dallas is to do that is to win this week, and that starts them on their way. I got to say this. I talked to people there a lot. After they lost to San Francisco, the building was kind of down. They were like, we thought we'd be better positioned to play that game. And after they lost to the Eagles, they were feeling pretty good. They felt like they played a really good game, could have won it, and obviously that confidence has followed them since. I think that right now, they go into this game feeling extremely good about their chances, probably feeling better about their team right now than the Eagles do about them.
Is there something to be said? You're a guy who knows about championship teams.
The Eagles just lost. Bad.
You played on them, and you know what it's like to be on part of a great team. Is there something to be said for bottoming out? That game against San Francisco, it looked over. And literally from that moment forward, they haven't looked like the same team.
Yeah, because you stop believing the press, right? Like you stop believing what everybody, you're so good at this year. And you look at yourself and go, you know what? We got to go play. We got to go evaluate ourselves and not worry about everybody else. Let's go play our style of football. It brings everybody back in, and their perspectives change, because again, when you take a bad loss like that, you go, man, we're really not as good as, and it just knocks the dust off, in my opinion. And all great teams got to find it. Look, San Fran lost 3 games in a row, man. Like all of a sudden you hit the bottom, you go, wow, we can play bad and get beat. We better figure this thing out in a hurry.
Yeah, people say that you can learn from wins too, but it's hard. You can't fake urgency.
That's exactly right.
There's a different level of motivation after you get your butt whipped. You wake up in the next morning like, I got to get better. If you win in that situation, it's a little harder to put in that extra time.
Cowboys, Eagles, sets up to be the biggest game of the season so far. Bad game or bad sign, Philadelphia Eagles, Jeff?
Bad game. I mean, listen, this team has beaten everybody that they played up until this point. They played bad. I mean, and listen, it's 13-6 at halftime, y'all. 13-6.
What do you get?
And you saw the yards after catch, 212 yards after the catch. They made explosive plays. The Eagles looked gassed in the second half. They didn't play up to expectation, but you can't just write off the Eagles because they play bad. This is not a bad football team. It was a bad night.
Bad game or bad sign, Graziano?
It's a bad sign, and I'm not saying they're a bad football team, but if they got waxed by a team they're probably going to have to go through in order to reach the Super Bowl. We're not talking about are the Eagles good or not. We're talking about are the Eagles Super Bowl champion good. And right now, the way they are playing, I don't care what the score was at halftime. They haven't been that. Rex is right. They have been winning close games with championship medal. That is to their credit. That is a compliment to them, right? And they have time, and they've built the kind of record you need in order to buy yourself time to work their issues out. But if you think this defense is anything like it was last year, I'm not sure what you've been watching.
Maybe what we should be saying about the Cowboys, about the Niners, is that in their 2 games against the Cowboys and the Eagles, the 2 teams that we expect them to have to get through to get to the Super Bowl, they outscored them by a combined total of 84-29.
Is that good?
42-10 and 42-19. Maybe this conversation is more about the Niners than it is about anything else.
Yeah, if it weren't for that mid-season lull, which is predicated on the injuries around their quarterback, then we'd be talking very differently about this 49ers team. But yeah, to do that to the only 2 teams that we see as legitimate NFC contenders against them is really impressive. They're playing incredibly well, and they do look like a buzzsaw that's unstoppable.
And so, to spin it back to Philadelphia, which is where the conversation began, most of the questions about their defense. Did they find one answer yesterday?
Well, they added Shaq Leonard, the former Colts linebacker who was cut by the Colts last week, and they think that'll help. They need help on defense. They need help at linebacker. They're shorthanded there. You already saw them go out at the trade deadline and add a couple pieces in the secondary. So the hope is that the veteran presence of Shaq Leonard will stabilize things at least a little bit on the defensive side of the ball, where they've been very, very leaky.
Jeff, you obviously know Shaq Leonard as well as anybody with your connection to Indy. You coached him for the end of last season. What does he add to Philadelphia?
Oh, probably one of the brightest football players I've ever been around, right? Diagnoses plays, understands where to be, is a ball hawk. You talk about a linebacker who can find the ball, whether it's punching it out, interceptions. He reads and diagnoses as well as anybody, and he helps get guys on the same page. Like, he is a true leader in the locker room. I got a ton of respect for what this guy, even though he's not the same player physically right now than he has been, this guy, the addition of him being back there and being able to be in coverage, which is really where they got exposed the other night, that's going to be a big help for them.
Speed and athleticism are huge, but I think your point, the intelligence is bigger because specifically against the 49ers, they like to attack the linebackers. Absolutely. And reading and diagnosing the difference between play action and run is a hard thing to do. And if Shaquille Leonard is capable of doing that, he does equalize some of the challenges they'll see when they face the 49ers again.
I think the scary thing about the 49ers is if you're good at linebacker, they can attack you some other way, right? I mean, that's the thing. And right now, the Eagles, just again, this is splitting hairs among the very best teams in the league, right? They just don't seem to have as much as the 49ers have in terms of ways to beat you.
And the challenging thing about the Eagles is they're a very stagnant defense. And they're going to do what they do.
They don't disguise.
Against the 49ers, it's the worst thing to do because they know your rules. The 49ers are a team that you're going to have to confuse and surprise, or you're going to have to dominate. And I brought this up yesterday. When you have a defense that's like, look, we played 3-4-2, beat us. You need to dominate up front. Your D-line has to win every single down, and they didn't do that against Trent Williams in that offensive line.
Two things I saw in that game. The edges for Philadelphia didn't play. They got way too much. They got to play at 1 yard and kind of feather things out, right?
In the weeds.
That part's going to have to be fixed for them. But also, the offense for Philly, we can't give them a pass, bro. They could have been up 14-0. Right? Instead, they settle for field goals. When you're playing a team as good as San Francisco, you're going to have to convert that, right? I think Sirianni will be more aggressive next time. They have to understand that part, right? It's like maybe you played a little, because you can't settle early. The game is completely different.
The point you made about those red zone opportunities is huge, especially against the 49ers.
Exactly.
If any team, but the 49ers, the one thing that we can say about the 49ers that we aren't quite sure about is can they come back from being down?
Right.
When they have you where they want you and they can always put you in those run-pass conflicts, that's a problem.
Exactly.
If it's 14-0 at the end of the first half or the end of the first quarter early in the game, then you're looking to find out if Brock Purdy can drop back knowing with the situation and destroy your defense. And then that D-line you have can get up the field. They can get up the field. You don't have to worry about
Can I just quickly also say one thing about them just squeaking by and barely holding on and winning these games, which I understand. And I don't understand. I would think that would make a lot more difference if they were doing it against bad teams. In the last 6 weeks, they beat Miami, Dallas, Kansas City, and Buffalo. I mean, these are all teams that we think, and I believe, including the Bills, are going to be in the playoffs. The others certainly are going to be in the playoffs. So they're not just barely holding on to beat the lower level teams. They're beating the best teams in the National Football League.
Don't speak common sense sense around here. You're going to get in trouble if you speak some common sense around here. We got 2 haters out here who are on the bandwagon and kicking Philly out.
You guys want to select moments.
I mean, right? Like this is Mr.
Moments.
It was only
These are
13-6
entire
at the half.
games. No, that's right. The entire games. These are entire games where they show flaws, and the flaws are consistently the same problem. That's the issue. We're talking about Super Bowl expectations.
Yes.
If we're talking about a team that wasn't in the playoffs last year or weren't a couple plays away from winning the Super Bowl last year, then I'm like, fine, you're right. This is great. This team has metal. We're talking about a team that is expecting to win a championship, and they have glaring flaws that they've been trying to address that will not go away. That is a bad sign.
They have glaring flaws against the best team in the NFL.
Okay. Well, they want to win the Super Bowl, Jeffrey.
They're going to go play him again, bro.
Okay.
You and I both know. They're going to go play him again.
Agreed. But if they cannot beat those best teams, if they do not have a situation to address those flaws, it's going to be a problem. Agreed. And I think Byard and Leonard take a step in that direction, but we'll see.
Before they get anywhere near San Francisco again, they got to go to Dallas on Sunday.